Mat Ineson from City Deanery. May I have permission to move a motion from the floor?
Under Standing Order 34.1, you are allowed to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to Synod for allowing me to bring this item to the agenda at such a late stage. And I want to add my thanks as well to Bishop Mike for his wise words a few minutes before. Like many of you, I was both saddened and upset by the decision at General Synod last week not to allow the ordination of women as bishops. As we've heard before, but I think it's worth saying again, this is despite 42 out of 44 dioceses voting for women to be made bishops by a 2/3 majority, and in this synod nobody voted against, which represents to me a clear majority of the Church of England in support of the draft Bishops and Priests Consecration and Ordination of Women measure. A small minority of the Church managed to bring it down in General Synod. Democracy has been violated, as Bishop Mike just said. And I think we have to conclude that the last elections to the House of Laity, at least, are not representative of the Church of England as a whole on this issue. So, what can we do about it? How can we give a voice to our frustration and to our disappointment? And this is what the motion that's before you is about. In Bristol Diocese, we've been at the forefront of encouraging the ministry of women at every level of the Church. Women were first ordained priests here, I believe. We're one of the few diocese synods meeting after General Synod, and so we have an opportunity to add our joint diocese voice to the individual voices calling for action after last week's vote. I'm aware that in the past few days the Archbishop's Council have asked the House of Bishops to consider what to do next at their meeting in a couple of weeks' time. Fresh thinking has been called for. Forgive me, but I think that after 8 years of talking, the thinking and the talking is probably getting a little stale. In the end, those opposed will always be opposed, and those for will always be for. The vast majority of the Church is for, so let's get on with this. Theological convictions mean that some cannot accept the authority of a woman, and I understand that. However, my theological conviction and my reading of Scripture is that God has gifted women and men for every type of ministry. And at the moment we're limiting the roles that half of these gifted people can play. That is both to the detriment of the whole of the Church and, more importantly, the gospel. This isn't just an internal matter. The no vote means that this current General Synod cannot expect to be listened to by society or Parliament when it cannot claim to represent the Church of England membership, having ignored our mandate on this vote. It is, in the words of one of my colleagues, a lame duck synod. The motion before you is important for 4 reasons. Firstly, it reaffirms our conviction as the Diocese of Bristol, expressed in our article vote last year, that women should be bishops. Secondly, it states clearly that we don't have confidence in this General Synod to transact the clear will of the majority of the Church. My fear about this returning to General Synod in July, which has been mooted, is that we could effectively be asking the same people the same question and expecting a different answer. Thirdly, it asks the House of Bishops, who showed great leadership in their voting last week, to explore every possible avenue to see that we approve the consecration of women as soon as possible. As Bishop Mike said, urgently and properly. Finally, this motion from Bristol Diocese, so often at the forefront of affirming the ministry of women in the past, could, I hope and pray, begin a church-wide movement to put our own house in order so that Parliament doesn't see the need to do it for us, which would be a disaster. I therefore propose the motion that is before you.
I just feel that it would be improper to completely diss the synod because we haven't got the correct votes that we would like. I'm not particularly happy that we disregard the whole of the General Synod's ability to do things. I think there are ways of doing things, and I would never say never. I don't think those opposed will always remain opposed, and I don't think those who are for, well, they may always remain for. But I just never say never, and people can change their minds, that's all.
It was actually a fairly small number of lay votes that made the difference. And history, as they say, is made by those who turn up. We only need to look at the level of support of hustings and of voting across the country to know that actually, if the will of the General or the Diocesan Synods is that clearly that women should be ordained to the episcopate, why was it that so few people took any interest in the votes? And maybe what we should be looking at is not just General Synod, but our own participation in elections and our own responsibility, and going back to say, in our PCCs, in our deanery synods, in our diocesan synods, we need to engage people.
I'm not sure I can wait the 2,000 years it's taken to get women priests, to get women bishops. I come from a long line of matriarchs. I have a large number of sisters. I know how effective women are. I pray for the time when the next conclave of cardinals take their wives, and the following one where the Pope takes her husband. The voice of the Church has not been heard. I'm a Democrat, I'm an active politician, and it always offends me when the will of the people is overridden by a small minority.
The unease around the words no confidence, as if we were saying that there is something fundamentally wrong with this General Synod. And I think there is. I think the allusion that I made in my speech to the fact that we can send something around all the dioceses, something comes back, and then that can be completely ignored. I think we might want to express some dissatisfaction with the systems of General Synod, the way the voting is done, the way laity are elected, and a vote of no confidence like this, I think, does nothing more than express our dissatisfaction with the way things are done at Synod.
I minister in a parish which has an extremely high number of new atheists who have caught me on the way to school every morning since the vote and expressed even more than their usual level of incredulity about the way the Church behaves. I think to vote against women bishops last week was a terrible thing to do. What would be even worse would be to be seen to be taking it lying down. To sit and wait another how many more years it's going to be, or to be honest, to bring it back to Synod next July when we will inevitably have the same outcome. So I'd like to urge Synod to make my job just a little bit easier in ministering to the new atheists of Westbury Park, and to accept this motion.
Just to say that I want to speak strongly for the whole motion as we have it. My understanding of Clause 2, which seems to be the one that some of you are a little anxious about, is I think it is actually quite a nuanced aspect of the motion. What it's actually saying, it's not actually saying we don't have confidence in the General Synod or this General Synod. What it's saying is we have no confidence in its ability to transact the clear will of the majority. In fact, it's more of a point about the voting system that Bill was complaining about, and consequently, I think people who read this, I don't think those of us on the General Synod need to feel paranoid in defence of this. It's not actually saying this General Synod or the General Synod. It's talking about the General Synod's ability. And I think that part of what Emma's talking about and I have spoken about and others have spoken about is that actually where we've lost complete credibility is how such a strong democratic vote in one direction can be undermined by a system such as we have, and I think that's what Clause 2 is about. Thank you for listening.
Thank you to those of you who've spoken. Mike's just stolen. Bishop Mike's just stolen exactly what I was about to say. That's all right. It carries more weight coming. The second part of the motion, which seems to be the thing that people are talking about, can I just remind us that this was Article 8 business, that all the dioceses were asked about this business, and that 42 out of 44 voted, I think I'm right in saying, by a 2/3 majority in each one about this business. This second part is about the ability, it's no confidence in the ability of this General Synod, of the General Synod to transact the clear will of the majority of the Church. We're not saying that we have no confidence in the General Synod to transact the business of the Church. That's not what we're saying. What we're saying with this is that we have no confidence in the ability of General Synod to transact the clear will of the majority of the Church. And I'm aware that that has ramifications for voting systems, for all kinds of things. But I think this needs to be said. I think this needs to be said at this moment in time about this, because this declares our frustration at the clear will of the Church of England being ignored by the body that governs us. And it also, I think what makes it worse for me is that the bishops are almost unanimous in their support of it as well, and it's ignoring them and not trusting them as well and their leadership. And I just, anyway, let's not go on about that. That's the second, let me not preach a sermon. That's the second point, and that's why I think I will hold to this second point. And I would like to move this motion as written before you at this point.
Can I please take your views? Those in favour of this motion, agenda item 7. Thank you. The motion is clearly carried.
How many abstentions?
There was no abstentions. 51 in favour, 3 against.